Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 152. Big week going on in the country, so there's a lot of stuff going on, but happy to have you guys join us tonight. We are joined tonight in the garage. I'm Steve Crane, Nate Hale on the other side. I got Dustin Bovey back there behind the producer, Mike, and our special guest, Pete Scalia. Pete, welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, Steve.
And thank you for bringing, you're welcome. Thank you for bringing the Maker's Mark Cask strength that we're going to be drinking tonight. If anyone wants to crack, Nate, you want to crack that?
Yeah, sure.
Do the honors, cork pop. While you're doing that, I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton here in Columbus, Ohio. They are providing tonight the Brick House, Connecticut. And I also want to thank Altadis USA. We've got the H Upman Nicaragua by AJ Fernandez in the Belcoso shape as the second cigar for the night for part 2. And also BS Cigar Company. I've got the silver now going out. I was smoking the BS silver. We also have the BS gold available. That's through the Tinder Box as well. And I also want to kind of highlight trying to do it in the reverse camera here, the blue hoodie I have on there right now. You guys can contact Tinder Box at Easton. Just call the store. If you're in the Columbus area, swing by the store and you can pre-order this sweatshirt along with 2 different t-shirts that are available for pre-order now through the end of the month. The hoodies are $40 plus tax. And if you guys aren't local, call and we'll get your information. We can ship them to you when they come in mid to late February. So very nice blue to the Nicaragua colors to kind of pay homage to where all the tobacco is coming from for both the BS silver and gold. And also last, but certainly not least, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. Thank you for all you patrons out there that are helping us do this, do the feed, help us get bottles when we need to, help us kind of do the equipment, like the mixer board, all that good stuff. And guys, appreciate it so much. Tonight, guys, part 2 will be Never Give Up. So stay tuned for that. Or if you're listening to the audio and this is part 1 for you, make sure you hit it on the part 2 after this. Or if you're tired of us talking about cigars and whiskey, you just want to hear about Pete's story and all that good stuff, do that. Without further ado, I'm going to get some whiskey here.
Yeah.
And it's a screw top. Can't really do a cork pop with that.
You can try. Probably break it.
Let's not have the first broken bottle on the podcast.
Well, let's do this, guys. How are you guys this week? Let's start with that before we get into cigar and whiskey. It's a big week,
right?
Yeah.
What week hasn't been a big week?
That's very true. I feel like we're saying that every week now.
Yeah.
It's a big week. Some stuff happened.
Yeah. Since about this time last year, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Me, it's another week. It's another day. I still got to take care of me and mine. I mean, that's my biggest priority. Elected officials aren't that big of a concern for me. Yes, I vote and I get involved in stuff like that, but at the end of the day, they're not the one who's signing my paycheck. So it's just, for me, it's just another day, another week.
Yeah, it's good.
Trying, whether you like it or don't like what's going on right now, like, still got to take care of you.
It's fair. How about you, Pete?
I'm good. I mean, we could still get, whiskey and cigars. You're doing
something right.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Well, good. All right. Well, let's talk about this bottle then.
Yeah.
Maker's Mark Cask strength. So this is, it says batch number 20-03, proof 109.8, and Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Pete, you said you're into weeded bourbons right now.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you kind of got on that sort of gravy train. Everybody was into like Weller Special Reserve and kind of got tired of waiting for it to show up at my local Kroger store. And, it kind of dawned on me that, Maker's makes a great weeded bourbon, right? It's been the standard for a long time. And so around the holidays, I started noticing they were coming out with a few different cask strengths that they hadn't done for years. Just reading up a little bit on the history, they pretty much had their one signature thing for going on 50 years.
A long time. Before
they started experimenting a little bit with, adding different staves in and coming up with their 46, things like that. And that's actually the first one I had tried. They make a 46 cask strength that personally I thought was pretty good. And it was interesting hearing that each one of the staves that they put 10 different staves in to come up with different flavor profiles.
10.
So depending, like if you do their, it's kind of like a special reserve. So they came out with some on the holidays. I don't know if you saw, they had like a bread pudding flavor.
Yes, I saw that.
Like a chocolate thing. I know my dad got one as a gift that apparently tastes like cheesecake.
Did it really taste like cheesecake?
It had like an aroma to it.
Like that chocolate one I know a while back.
Right. So, I've just been a fan of, I know that, cask strength seems to be kind of like in right now.
So in.
Cask strength, barrel proof. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I like the fact too, I forget which one of the distillers it was. You go to the website, it might have been with Buffalo Trace or Weller or somebody, you can craft your own on the website.
Really?
The different things, just to kind of like play around to see how it's made and stuff. And when you start getting into the higher proof stuff, it says, well, just be advised that that's, you drink that's when possibly poor decisions could be made.
I
feel like poor decisions can happen if you drink enough of anything.
That's
So
it's not necessarily the
glass
proof.
half full versus first.
It's not necessarily the proof. It's how much of the bottle.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me though, like their cask strength, I mean, it's got the great flavor profile. I'm a fan of, like, sometimes you could add just like a little bit of water to it just to kind of open up when it comes to like a cask strength or whatever.
You always talk about that, like you can kind of like proof it down a little bit to your liking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can just do that anytime.
And I know they say too that the cask strength, this in particular, the maker's cask really kind of holds its own if you do blend it in with cocktails. But I found that, even with the higher proof bourbons like that, it has like a nice little burn to it. I mean, I'm not, a connoisseur by any means. I just know that
you're passionate. You're an enthusiast.
You know what you like, right?
Yeah.
You know what like tastes good to you. So to me, I mean, it's interesting. Like if you find something that you like and then you kind of research it a little bit and, learn a little bit more about the process and you're like, oh, okay. So I think I might like that. But this particular one, actually, I haven't tried just the maker's cask strength. So I was curious to try it with you guys.
So this is your first time having this?
It is. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm all shared up now.
Yeah.
I always feel rude. We used to do this where I was like able to like do this before and then it wasn't working with Facebook. And so like, I feel like you're looking at me. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good over here texting.
Hey, no, believe me, I can relate. That's the thing. But that's how it is now too. You have to get, everything shared out there. So
that's right. When everyone to see you. I mean, come on, you come all the way over here. You gotta get people watching. Let's take a sip. See, I think that's sweet.
Yeah. And
not much burn. I thought it was gonna be more burn.
And especially just under 110 proof.
There's the burn.
It's kind of in the finish.
There it is. Yeah.
But it's just in the finish, really. But
took a sec.
I like
I'm warmer now.
You had mentioned Weller, and I was thinking a Weller Antique, which is 107 proof,
right?
And I think this has less burn than Antique does.
Oh yeah,
I would agree with that.
And I think this is just slightly higher proof than Antique is
109.8. Yeah.
But it has less burn to it. It's pleasant.
Have you ever been to the makers, either of you guys, distillery?
I haven't. I know my dad's in the ambassador thing and all that, but
Dustin, grab the mic and just kind of give us a brief description of like going to the makers distillery, because it's a huge operation.
Right? It's basically the Disneyland of distilleries
for children.
Yeah.
For 21.
Children 21 and over. No, it's really cool. Like, so Makers is known, like, as you drive by, like all of their buildings are painted black to kind of match like the brick houses and things like that. Each building is something different. So like all of their labeling is in its own building. All of the waxing and the bottling is in obviously its own building, and all of the bottles are hand dipped by the workers, and you can actually buy your own bottle and dip it yourself while you're there too. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
The Maker's 46, for anyone out there who doesn't know, is actually stored in the side of a mountain where it's a constant 50 to 55 degrees.
Like they blasted in specifically just for that, right?
Yeah. So the Maker's 46 is aged similar to how wine would be. It's just, underground at a naturally climate controlled environment.
Yeah, I want to get back down there, and that's been something that is going to definitely stay on my 2021 once things open back up. I mean, we've been saying this now for 10 months,
right?
I'm going to do that when it opens back up, and then it's like, oh, it's opened back up, and we were going to go down not too long ago, and then it was just like, oh, they got 2 tours that day or something like that.
Well, and I'd kind of seen that online too, that some of the distilleries did open
Yep.
back up, and we're doing tours. Others we're kind of waiting to see. But it seems like, I mean, demand for folks who know that maybe they can get. I know that there have been at some of the distilleries some unique offerings you can only get there.
Yeah.
So
and Makers has a program like that, I think, too, where you can
Yes.
you can when they barrel it, right?
Mhm.
And then it's so many years later that it'll become available, and then you can go back down and get it and do the dipping and all that stuff.
Yeah, their ambassador program. Right?
Ambassador
Yeah.
program. That's exactly
It's their ambassador program. I signed up for it. They send you like an ornament.
How much
year.
time do you have left?
I don't know.
Like to wait for your
it's
barrel?
been probably 2 or 3 years since I've done it.
Isn't it like
Because is it
6
gotta be
years?
coming up,
4 or 6?
3 or 4 years this summer. I don't recall how long it is. I think it's obviously around that 4 to 6 range. But
Mhm.
I know when I was down there, we stayed with a couple of ours, friends of mine, who lived in Danville, and he's a huge Makers fan and had signed up, and his had just started to come to that maturity, I think, within that next year, where he could get his own bottle.
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really
it
cool.
really is.
You sign up, and then they send you a letter in the mail, like a big old packet in the mail. You get a whole bunch of stuff, and it gives you like your own barrel number. That when it comes of age, you can go down and get your bottle and dip it. And
Dip into all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
And I think they also have the last time I was in Louisville, they have the Makers Experience in downtown Louisville. Didn't go in there just because it looked like it was packed on that particular day, because it was the weekend before the Kentucky Derby and or the Monday before, so everywhere in Louisville was packed. And no, it just looked like a giant, like 3-story bar and restaurant in downtown Louisville. Bunch of signage. I mean, just looks huge. Like imagine putting a Hard Rock Cafe in the middle of like High Street downtown.
It's pretty cool. Cool concept. Jim
Yeah.
Johnson out there says he has a barrel. It comes due this year. Can't wait. Been 7 years, he said.
Wow.
So I don't know if they're all that way or if you can sign up for different parts, like different time frames. I'm not sure, but that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very, and you know what? Admittedly, I mean, that's something that I've always wanted to do, like the Bourbon Trail in general. I haven't
You haven't been down there at all?
gone and visited any of the distilleries, and I know Makers would probably be like, one of the first ones. And it's just interesting to see like the history of how this whole industry has taken off. I know we talked a little bit beforehand about how visiting, Makers, you said, it's kind of like the Disneyland of like bourbon. And it's just, the wax thing and all the special editions they come out with, over the years, and all the different colored waxes, that sort of stuff.
So what is it about Makers that you gravitated towards? Why Makers?
Well, like I said, I'm far from a connoisseur, and I'm so one of those people where when I hear others say, "Oh, I'm detecting hints of this, that, or the other," and I'm just now starting to say, "Oh, okay, that's yeah," because when I was younger, it was like it just tasted like different varying levels of turpentine, but it was you sort of like develop. You can pick up on little things like the vanilla in there.
Yep.
I definitely do notice the difference between the rye mash bills and the wheated mash bills, and you get that little bit of sweet, like you were saying. And with this, I like the fact that it's like kind of like that delayed burn. It stays on your tongue not too long.
No.
But just enough.
It's got that nice finish. It is a warmer finish. And it's not like that first sip for me. It was definitely like that late lingering heat kind of in the chest.
Yeah.
A couple sips later, it's not as pronounced. It's just kind of a nice warm finish.
Mm-hmm.
The back of this bottle for those, and it's a little different than the normal Maker's Mark bottle, different shape, but you got that the traditional, or what they're known for, obviously that wax dip on it. But it's kind of cool. It says it's Maker's Mark, but a little over the top. That first taste says it all. Our cask strength bourbon is the boldest expression of Maker's Mark to date. Bottled at barrel proof, it's remarkably full flavored, yet still smooth and refined thanks to the soft red winter wheat we have used since the beginning. At any distillery, a cask strength whiskey straight from the barrel is the truest reflection of who you are and what you do. Here at Maker's Mark, this is who we are, and we're pretty darn happy about it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I liked how when they talk about it on their website too, that they mention that it's everything you like about Makers sort of enhanced. And
it is.
For many years, I mean, they stuck with their one product, right? Makers made makers, and
They kept the lights on.
that was all you could get. And then when people started sort of like, developing this affinity for like the higher proofs and that sort of thing, I don't know. I think this is good to me because it does have those hints of what I like about regular makers, with all the different weeded bourbons and the choices you have, Weller Special Reserve, all these different things, Larceny, which that was kind of another comparison I did. I hated the fact that I picked up a bottle of the Larceny barrel proof last year, really enjoyed it. And then one of the whiskey mags had to name it their whiskey of the year. So now you can't,
Nope.
Hate when that happens.
Can't find it anywhere. But I think that the makers, there's all of that name recognition and marketing that goes along with so many different whiskeys. And I think once you find like that flavor profile you like, and for me, this sort of like it says on the bottle there, the little stronger version of what you like about makers is why I like it.
Well, I do too. And we've talked about it, I think, before with some of the big name brands like Jim Beam. Especially, I think Jim Beam always is like a secret because they don't put Jim Beam on the bottle like a Booker's and some of the ones, and so people don't realize it. It almost gives it this like the Bud Light type thing, the Budweiser, like Maker's Mark. They're like, but it's Maker's. I'm not going to spend extra money on a Maker's bottle,
right? And
it kind of deters people from actually trying something like this. This is a nice bottle. I think this is great, and for it to be cask strength, it's not that over the top like 115 or 120 something,
right.
It's like, okay, no, this is stronger, but we're not trying to like just have a measuring contest here, you know what I mean? Like it's not one of those things. I think this is very drinkable on its own.
It's not trying to set your palate on fire.
No,
it's trying to make it a very pleasant drinking experience. Like I haven't, I added a little bit of water, but I haven't sipped it yet. But before I added the water, like right at the beginning with that sweetness, I got like a raisin flavor to it.
A little taste there too.
Raisin?
So, yeah, a little bit of raisin.
Okay.
Actually, it smells more pleasant after adding the water to it. Because like before I added the water, like you definitely smell some heat to it. But adding just a little bit of water, you're able to smell a little bit more because it cuts that heat out.
I'll have to try that on the second glass.
Yeah, really, really smooth.
Yeah.
Once you do just put that little bit of water in there.
Sean's in the audience here, and he just had his first sip. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's a delayed burn." Right? It does. It sneaks up on you, right? Yeah, exactly. Right here.
Yeah.
Guess you're.
Well, that's what they say, right? It gives you kind of like that hug.
Yeah, Kentucky hug.
Yeah, right there. Yeah,
it definitely does.
And it's got a long finish. Like it's got a nice oily texture to it, and that finish just kind of coats your palate, but it doesn't scorch your palate. You still kind of feel that heat for a little bit. Scorch your esophagus.
It settles down a little bit, in my opinion. I think it settles down. I think it is. I still get a little of that sweetness, which I expect. And it's not like butterscotch, but it's something like there's like this creaminess to it also. Like you're saying raisin, Nate.
Yeah.
I'm getting, I don't know. It's not honey. It's not like that vanilla you talked about.
It's like a weird, like in between vanilla kind of.
Yeah,
Not a Werther's, is it?
It's not like a Werther's. Don't get me started on the whole Werther's thing again. All right? Werther's is candy that the old people have in their pockets, right? I mean, that's like traditionally.
Yeah.
And they do it even in the commercial.
Well, then the commercial it shows that, yeah.
Because you and Ryan.
I feel like that's the reality, though. Like they came up with that marketing campaign because that's what happens.
Yeah.
Like you have a grandpa or something like that, and like, you want a hard candy? Which no one calls it hard candy anymore, first of all. But then it's a Werther's, and it's never mind. Don't get me started.
I remember when I gave Ryan a Werther's at the shop that one day. You then showed Ryan that old Werther's commercial, and Ryan just fell in love with it. He goes, "Nate, you're the old man."
Yeah, you are the old man there in that story. So how do you guys think this with the cigar? I took some sips of it before really lighting up the cigar a whole lot. I was prepared when you said cask strength. I was a little worried because I had picked out this Brick House, Connecticut. And this is a milder expression, I think, from Brick House, but it's not your traditional Connecticut cigar. I don't know what you guys think of the cigar so far, but the cool thing about this cigar, and I'm always shocked on how they did this and kept the price low, is that it's technically a double Connecticut. So it has a Connecticut shade wrapper from Connecticut, which typically will drive up the cost. And then you have a Connecticut broadleaf binder, which is a little bit hardier of a leaf, gives it a little more body, and then it's Nicaraguan tobacco as the filler. So when you look at it, everyone's like, "Oh, it's a real mild cigar." This is standing up to the whiskey, which I thought it might get overpowered by it.
I would think that too when you say like a Connecticut
Yeah.
with a cask proof.
Yeah.
Because normally when I was having the other like cask strength variety of makers, the 46, I had a Nicaraguan, but it was a Maduro, and it kind of like balanced it out, pretty well.
Yeah.
But no, this I mean I think it goes pretty well with it.
Yeah.
I seem to find that U.S. Connecticut wrappers just have a little bit more like woodiness or bite to them than say an Ecuadorian Connecticut.
I would agree with that.
Like take the Monte Cristo Classic in white. Monte Cristo Classic has got a U.S. Connecticut. Monte Cristo White's got an Ecuadorian Connecticut. I think the Monte Cristo White smokes smoother, even though technically it's a little bit heavier of a cigar in terms of the body because there's Nicaraguan tobacco in there in the filler and in the binder.
Yeah.
It's just got a little bit more body than the Classic, but the texture of the smoke on the White series is a little smoother than the Classic, which has the American Connecticut.
Well,
like
in a
this.
truer comparison, if you had, I don't know if you guys have had it from Altadis Monte Cristo, they have the Monte Cristo White series, which is a huge selling SKU for them.
Yeah.
And then they came out with a Monte Cristo White vintage Connecticut, which they did put a true Connecticut shade wrapper from Connecticut on the same blend.
Yeah.
And I think it does, it gives a different complexity than the Ecuadorian Connecticut.
It did.
And I really like it.
I haven't seen those in a while outside of a sampler in too many places.
Yeah, I don't know if they still do that individually. I like that cigar because it actually has the red barns on it.
But
And when I was out in Connecticut, saw the red barns.
Really?
And it's literally just like a kind of a picture of what they have out there in their Connecticut fields.
Yeah.
Now they were growing Connecticut broadleaf when I was out there, so it wasn't what they use on the wrapper leaf, but it's a cool homage to what they do out there in Connecticut at their farms.
But like with that Monte Cristo, when they came out with that cigar, because I was still working in the industry at the time, when they came out with that cigar, like each size was $2 to $3 more expensive than the White series because it was a U.S. Connecticut wrapper. And so then when Brickhouse came out with this, which was a U.S. Connecticut wrapper, which the foot band kind of gives you a little bit of hint about that because it says Connecticut on it, but it's got the red, white, and blue on it. It's not $3 more than a Brickhouse. It's not $2 more than a Brickhouse.
See, now this is why I was really looking forward to coming here and being with you guys because this is like I feel like I'm visiting Cigar Nirvana.
This is like this garage is not Cigar Nirvana.
I'm with
it's very smoky.
Like back in the day, the Greeks, they would climb the mountain to reach the oracle.
Yeah.
And assume some of that knowledge.
You got to keep climbing that mountain. Man.
How many times have you watched 300?
You're at the foothills. You're at the foothills right now with us. I can introduce you to some of the people up top. The cool thing about JC Newman also is for those of us that are in Ohio, it's a third generation. 1895. Julius Caesar Newman actually started it in Cleveland, Ohio.
No kidding.
Yeah. And then transplanted down into the Florida area. And they were using, obviously like Cuban tobacco way back before the embargo. And then they really started operations down in Nicaragua. And then they hooked up with and kind of merged with Fuente. And so now they're kind of a conglomerate down in the DR in Nicaragua. And they're doing some really cool stuff. So if you guys are interested in those two families, the Fuente family and the Newman family, they do some great things with schools and other things down in Nicaragua and Dominican Republic. I mean, they are really big. Like a lot of them, I mean, for those that don't know, a lot of these big families, like even the Aroa family does the same stuff, is that they really give back to these otherwise third world countries.
Yeah.
And so people in America, they don't really, I don't think, realize that this is such a big industry for these third world countries. And we look at it here, maybe not as much lately, but I am interested to see where we go with the some of the politics as far as, because that was a threat on our industry with tobacco and everything else, where marijuana is getting more widely accepted. Right. Tobacco is still kind of this whole like sin industry. And you look at some of the things that these, and that not just the smoking and tobacco, the harm that it may do to you, but what these families are doing in these countries and how our laws and legislation can affect not only like, oh yeah, we're saving the kids, we're doing this, like we're trying to make America healthier while you're sucking down, Coca-Cola and Big Macs, but it's like, but you can't smoke cigars. these families are doing so much. And the Newman family is just like that. They do so much. Schools and
hospitals.
Yeah.
There's that documentary we talked about before on here, and it's hand rolled, and they go into that a little bit with the Newman family and the Fuente family. And it's just kind of it pulls at the heartstrings because they started this stuff and now they see these kids growing up, and then they didn't have it. Like they had the basic school. And then it's like, oh, now we need like a high school. Now we need to do this. And it's like, they see these kids where in these countries, it's not like Cuba, for example, being communist, where everyone gets that education and stuff like that. This is an opportunity for these children to get good jobs, to go to other countries based on the education they're getting, where all this like millions of dollars are coming from the cigar manufacturers. It's just really cool.
Well, I think it's neat too. I mean, you've actually like been there to see this firsthand.
I've been down there. I've been to Cuba and I've been to Connecticut. But
I've been to the DR.
Yes.
When I worked for a cigar company, I went to the DR, and you've got about 200 people that are working in the fields, and then you got about another 200 that are working in the factory. Between the people taking the veins out of leaves, sorting the leaves, the rollers, the QA people, or quality control people, and all that stuff. The people rotating the pilones and measuring the temperature. I mean, so and the company I worked for was relatively small.
Yeah,
and they still employed over 400 people. For as small of an operation as they were only making about 4 million cigars a year, which in the grand scheme of things, I mean, Fuente JC Newman is probably making 30 million cigars.
Well, but when you talk about like that many cigars, again, being like a total noob, I'm fascinated with the fact that, I mean, a lot of people don't realize, everything that goes into making a premium cigar. Like,
and
right?
with time, just like with bourbon,
aging and things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to the farming. I mean, it really does.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that, we've talked about on this, if you guys listen regularly, is like when we were talking to Eddie Russell at that meet and greet we had, and I asked the question about the grains. And even he was like, that's an interesting question. I don't get asked that very often about the grains. I mean, because no one in the bourbon craze, they don't take it back to the farming. Where tobacco, it goes all the way back to the farming. That's what, like you say, it's seed to what's in your hand, basically. Seed to ash type stuff. But yeah, it is cool. I was just looking on here that not only were it schools, I wanted to add to this. They actually do some medical facilities down there as well. So, I mean, they're really, really contributing to the families and the economy down there.
And some of them even
it's not what you would expect, when you think of like premium cigar families.
Well, what was it within the past year and you're talking about how our regulations, being a world superpower, has that trickle down effect that affects these other countries. Wasn't it they finally did make that exception with that FDA ruling, wasn't it?
So it got messy. Yeah, it got messy, and that's and not really to dive down the rabbit hole of obviously the new administration. I think there's a lot of positives that's going to come out of this for the country, and I think that there's some things that we'll see that will be kind of the it's not going to sneak in there, but what happened with the FDA in 2015, and that was with the Obama administration. It wasn't just because it was the Democrats. It was put in the omnibus budget bill.
Right.
Just like now it's coming to fruition now that all these people that are really paying attention to everything, they're like, how are you going to put like this $1 trillion, relief thing? And why is all this other stuff in it? It's like, that's because that's how the government does it.
Right.
But no one was paying attention. So when the FDA got control of the 2009 Tobacco Act, and they originally exempted premium cigars, pipe tobacco, and they're really just going after the cigarettes in 2009. In that budget bill, they kind of lifted that exemption, and all of a sudden they started going after the premium cigars. So all the small guys, like some of the pipe tobacco companies, they're closed.
Well, it seemed like a lot of the companies too, the manufacturers and some of these families that have been in business for generations were worried that, I mean, that was going to be it. So
not only do you have the local taxes, so it's state by state, right, as far as the tobacco tax on premium cigars, and they were going up and down. Some states had really, really high taxes. Other ones had no taxes, so that was a big thing. And then you could ship cigars across state lines. But what would actually affect it is if you had to pay to play, and they were going to basically tax you you had to pay to get the FDA to examine every blend. And not only that, but you had to pay for every size. So if you had this Brick House, Connecticut, and it came in 5 sizes, you didn't have to just have them test the blend of the tobacco, make sure that it's FDA approved.
Right.
It's like, okay, so you have a Corona Lager, which we're smoking. You need to pay to get the Robusto looked at and also the Churchill looked at. And it was like thousands and thousands of dollars. The Newmans and the Fuentes, they could do it.
Right.
They can hire the attorneys. They can make sure everything's, right. And some of the companies did that. And then it was delayed. And then it was delayed again.
Right.
And then now no one's really talking about it. But, from this angle, and again, not to dive down the rabbit hole, that's one of the things that this industry could be threatened by with what's going on now. And it's a small thing. We're such a small, enthusiastic group of cigar smokers. The premium cigar industry is like 3% of the overall tobacco. Right. I think it is something like that. So it's all based on cigarettes, and then we get thrown in there as the cigars. But that could affect not only what you're paying for cigars. So instead of like this coming in at a ridiculous price point of like $7, this could turn into like a $14 cigar.
Well, what you were mentioning there too, I mean, wasn't there also something that played into that where that's why we saw a lot of these manufacturers, like I noticed, just one example, Rocky Patel, for example, started coming out with all these different varieties and trying to get a lot of new product out there, because wasn't there going to be a lot of red tape involved when it came to introducing new?
It was different a little bit. That was cigarettes for sure. You don't see many new cigarettes now. Right. So, but then it was like in 2009 or whatever, there was just a huge slew of them coming out. There was an exemption period that if you came out, but they had actually taken it back to like 2007.
Okay.
So if you were out on the market before 2007 with a blend, a predicate, blend, you were okay. You were exempted. But if you came out between 2007 and 2016, August of 2016, you had at the time 2 years to sell it, and then you would have to file for it. Then that got extended, and then it got extended. And like I said, now it's kind of just in limbo. But that's why, like Rocky, they were like, basically they have all this tobacco that they had been sitting on, waiting to use. And they're like, all right, come out with this, come out with this, come out with that. You know what I mean? It's like, get it out in the next 2 years. And you saw a lot of like limited stuff coming out.
Right.
But now a lot of them, even some of the smaller guys, are coming out with stuff still, just because no one has really addressed it yet, because it has been extended. I'll be interested to see what happens in the upcoming years if it does get reintroduced as something that the FDA. And the thing is that from the industry, people were like, what are you testing for? Like, my viewpoint was, and I said it years ago, was, why don't you go get an FDA approved facility? You know what I mean? So you go down there and you're like, all right, so this is all FDA approved, the tobacco that you're using, the farms and everything else you're using, pesticides, whatever it is, this is all good. And then anything you guys put out here, that's great. Instead of doing, you got 5 sizes, I need to, like, what are you testing for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's Criollo tobacco, that's Corojo tobacco. Like, you can't, like, it was, and that's what a lot of the guys, and they won't say it on the air, but if you talk to them, they would say, like, yeah, this is, sure, that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, they knew that they couldn't really test it for what the FDA typically tests for, because it's tobacco. Right. And there was so much pride with, like, the Newman family, for example, Fuente family. They take that pride that they're not like called the big tobacco, like cigarette companies that was the big harm there, is they kept adding stuff. Right. These guys were pure. I'm sure there's some out there, like smaller people, are like, oh yeah, we'll just use this cheap pesticide, and who cares if it gives someone cancer? Whatever. But a lot of these guys take a lot of pride in what they do, and again, all the things at stake for not only their family and their company, but it's the employees that Nate was talking about. It's the kids that are going to the schools. It's just this huge infrastructure that they have done that they would not risk for FDA approval. It's
right.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's why I see it possibly changing going forward, but that's always a risk in an industry that is considered a sin, tax industry. And alcohol is the same way, right? So, yeah. I like this cigar a lot. I think this is one that really surprised me. And again, coming in at a price point, like I mentioned in that kind of story, is that it's like kind of like $6 to $8 range.
Depending on the size.
Yeah. And for it to have true Connecticut tobacco on not only the wrapper, but in the binder, it's actually pretty phenomenal. If you guys have not tried this, if you're a mild smoker, I think you probably like it. If you're kind of a mild to medium smoker, you'd like it. Full-bodied, maybe not. I think you might like the flavor, but as far as the strength, it's not going to be a real strong cigar.
No, but it's definitely a cigar that, like, if you're someone kind of like me that tends to, if it's a day where I know I'm going to be smoking multiple cigars, start out with something a little bit on the lighter end and then work my way up throughout the day so that way I don't blow out my palate.
Yeah.
Unless there's a particular cigar that I want to try on a fresh palate, I'll typically start with something a little bit lighter. And, something like this would be in that range, like with a cup of coffee in the morning, because I think this, because of the broadleaf in there as well as the Nicaraguan and the filler, just like it holds up to this cask strength, like it's going to hold up to a coffee, and you're still going to be able to taste the flavor of the cigar in the morning.
Really?
My stepdad used to be the other way. He would always go lighter as his day went because he didn't want to smoke something that had a high nicotine content at the end of the day because he wanted to be able to go to sleep. So this is something that he would smoke at the end of the day.
Really? Sorry, we got some people mentioning there's some feedback on here. Not really sure what that's about. Rip ears.
I double checked my phone.
No, it's not your phone. Let me switch the audio back here real quick.
Totally, I can totally like taste what you were saying too, and it's kind of neat because again, just starting to pick up on those little nuances between like the Connecticut and then the filler in there. It's a nice.
Keep talking.
I know. I was gonna say
Just
I'm
cleaning
coming in.
up
I'm
here.
like I'm ashing all over the place.
That's
here.
all right.
That's all right. It's a garage.
Vibrating really bad, they're saying. Interesting.
What's vibrating? I don't know.
It's our energy.
It says great now. If you guys give some comments,
There you go,
obviously saying
yeah.
great now.
All right, we fixed it. Awesome.
Better now. Cool. Let us know, guys, if it does go back there. Just a couple mouse
That's
clicks.
one great thing about having a live feed and people listening live and commenting. Like, oh, the audio sucks. Hold on. All right, better. We're good.
Sorry, we can't
Thanks.
fix the video on our faces, but
Yeah, I can't do anything
that's
about
it
that.
on that.
I could shave.
You could share. I was going to talk to you about that. All right, so this is the part of part one. We're going to do a kind of a rating. So you're going to rate out of 10. You're going to do the cigar out of 10. You're going to do the whiskey out of 10, and then the pairing out of 10.
Okay.
10 being the best, obviously. So go ahead with that. Pete, you go ahead and get started there.
All right. We're gonna start with the cigar, the whiskey.
Whatever you feel.
You're
You're smoking a cigar, so stick with a cigar. How about that?
I mean, I would agree with that assessment that this is this is one like I typically am one of the people you talked about that tends to go for like a little bit stronger, but I like the fact that I don't know if a word that would make sense with this would be balanced.
Yeah.
That's a really nice balance. To me, I always like err on the side of like being generous. I would say this would be like a 7 for me.
Okay. 7 out of 10.
Yeah, 7 out of 10.
How about the whiskey?
The whiskey, the whiskey itself, and again, I've kind of been getting more into like the stronger proofs, the higher proofs with that little bit of burn. I think what I really like about this is the fact that it's not that overwhelming heat right when you taste it.
Nope.
I know, like you said, it does sneak up on you a little bit.
I'm warmer.
Yeah,
I'm warmer.
Water opens
yeah,
it
the
up a
water,
little.
that little bit of water opens it up, and like you said too, even with it kind of takes that initial like off the aroma.
Yeah.
So when you put that in, I mean, I would give this probably, I don't know if it'd be up among my favorites, but probably a solid 8.5. Do you
8.5.
do you do halves?
We've had people doing like 8.5, 6, 7. I mean, yeah, whatever you want.
I'm just over here thinking, damn it, Pete's stealing my ratings.
Oh yeah. But together, I
Yeah, let's see
mean, again, typically, I mean, when like you were saying, Steve, when you hear cask strength, you would normally think maybe like a stronger, like a Maduro or something to go with that. But I think this Nicaraguan tobacco in this cigar actually like pairs really nicely with that. And I kind of like did a little bit before and after I added the water. I think you add a little water in this to open it up. I think they pair a little better together.
See, I might have to do that on the second glass. Yeah.
So I would, Yeah, I'd go probably a 7 for the pairing.
It's tough. That's tough ratings.
Yeah.
It's good.
And again, not, really having as developed of a palate to really give like an expert opinion, but as far as, just somebody who
But the thing with that is like there's cigar smokers that are in all stages of their smoking. You have newer cigar smokers, you have guys that have been doing it for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. So if you're someone who's only been smoking cigars for say 5 years, your rating is going to appeal to someone who's just like that.
Right.
It may not be the same thing as someone who's been doing it for 30 years or someone who's been in the industry for 30 years, but there's still people that are going to relate to your ratings because.
Here's what I'm going to say about that. Cigar Aficionado just put out their top 25.
and
they've been doing it for years.
Right.
These are supposed to be the experts.
Yeah.
Just give an honest opinion because that's what it is. Like then it gives people that. Because any year, every time that someone comes out with a top 25, oh, that's bullshit. That's not the best cigar of the year. I can't believe that got it. I mean, it's like it's everyone's really, really subjective when it comes to this.
Well, I know when I first started trying cigars, with buddies, like maybe, probably over 25 years ago, you kind of went with like what people talked about a lot. And I mean, I honestly think that, there's so many more options now.
Oh yeah.
That that's what kind of makes it difficult sometimes because a lot of you'll hear a brand that's popular, and obviously, with Newman and coming out with like Brick House and that sort of thing, you hear some of these different names and things, but until you like actually kind of try them and you can appreciate the fact that if somebody like if you heard with this being in Connecticut, that you would shy away from that because it wouldn't have that much flavor. It actually has like a nice, I think, balanced flavor profile.
Oh yeah, I agree. All right, Nate, go ahead with your ratings there.
So on the cigar, I'm at a 7 as well. Just in terms of Connecticut, there's a few out there that I tend to gravitate to a little bit more, that I like more. I think, however, this is one of those cigars I'd put in the category of a bang for buck type of cigar. That $6 to $8 price point, the flavor that you're getting from the cigar, the quality of construction. It's a really good cigar. Ash is a little flaky for me. That's why I wasn't trying to do a long ash like Pete was.
Pete learned the hard way.
Right.
That's all right.
But no, it's got a good flavor to it. I definitely taste the difference between the U.S. Connecticut and say an Ecuadorian Connecticut, or even the Connecticut Nicaragua that we had from Romeo and Julieta that came out last year. Definitely a difference there, but it's a great bang for buck cigar. The whiskey, I'm at least an 8.5. At least, maybe pushing up a little bit more.
Do we know what the price point is on this bottle in Ohio?
In Ohio, under $40.
Okay.
That's a great bang for buck whiskey.
Yeah.
That's a great bang for buck cask strength.
I would say so.
Yeah. So if you're someone who takes price into consideration, then that might bump up your ratings just a little bit. As far as the pairing, I think the cigar holds up well enough to where the pairing is actually more around an 8. I think this whiskey actually makes the cigar smoking a little bit better because you still taste the cigar. Like if this was too light of a cigar, this whiskey would overpower it. You wouldn't be able to taste the cigar. Not a good pairing, or vice versa.
Sure.
But this cigar, because of the broadleaf that's in that binder, which has a unique flavor to it, and then also that Nicaraguan tobacco in the filler, you get a nice subtle spice on the retrohale. So that's one of the ways you can tell like this cigar actually has a little bit of flavor and body to it, and is going to stand up to a stronger whiskey, something stronger than just regular 80 proof whiskey.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, the cigar, I give it an 8. I got a little higher than you guys. I'm always impressed with this cigar, especially for the price point. You say bang for your buck, but this cigar, it is different. That's what I like about it, is that they did something with the Connecticut wrapper and then the Connecticut broadleaf binder where you're not expecting that, especially like we talked about already, like the fact that it's true Connecticut tobacco, which is phenomenal that they were able to do that. But when I think of some of the higher price point Connecticut's with like Dominican tobacco, I don't like. I get more bitterness from those. I am a Nicaraguan tobacco fan. I mean, I like Dominican, I like Honduran, and all that stuff. But I mean, when it comes to this, it smokes more like a medium-bodied cigar for me.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of flavor. You mentioned the retrohale, Nate. I think this cigar has a nice, like you said, spice. And the retrohale, and for those that aren't familiar with retrohale, it's pushing it through your nose, not inhaling it, but pushing through your nose, and it really opens up. And I get a lot more flavor from the cigar when I retrohale, and I can't not retrohale anymore when I smoke.
I noticed. I was just going to say that is definitely an acquired thing, and it takes some.
Or do you do it?
I do it as well. Yeah. And I mean, it really does. You get a lot more out of it when it comes to starting to detect all of those different flavors to it.
So I don't know. I can't. I have, like, when we test cigars or, like, new brands, or when we were blending the BS brand, like, I would have to purposely try not to retrohale sometimes just to see what the smoking experience is for, I would say, the majority of cigar smokers that don't retrohale. With this one, though, it's got a lot of, like, complexity as far as the different flavors you get, especially when you retrohale. So that's why I give it an 8, which is not a bad. 7s aren't bad for something like this. But again, coming in that $6 to $8 price point, this cigar I think is a sleeper. I think a lot of people look at Brickhouse and it's like the budget cigar I used to smoke, but now I smoke, quote, the good stuff. You know what I mean? Or whatever you want to call it. Because, like, even J.C. Newman, they've got, like, we have a great bundled cigar called the House Handmade that comes out of J.C. Newman. We sell so much of it.
Yeah.
Like, ridiculous amounts of singles and bundles. And that's in that kind of $4 to $5 range. Then you have the Brickhouse. You have the Perla Del Mar, which is from them as well. And that's kind of in the same price point, $6 to $7, $8, all that stuff. And then they bump it way up with a Diamond Crown.
Okay.
Diamond Crown and
the Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar, which is, I always thought was spelled wrong, but it's because that's how Julius Caesar Newman spelled his name.
Oh,
I think it's C-A-E.
That's where the J.C. Newman comes from.
Yeah, J.C. Newman. Yeah, Julius Caesar Newman. That was back in the late 1800s. So they have that, and that's in that kind of like $15 to $20 price point. I mean, so they're all over the board with this, but this thing smokes great. I think 8. The whiskey, again, I always bring in the price point. That's why I asked that. So for $40, $39.99, or wherever you're at, I'd say 8 to 8.5, something like that. Like, kind of like right with you guys. I don't think I might have had this before, but not to my recollection. Like, I have never owned a bottle of this.
Yeah,
but I think I will now. So that's what I'll say about that. I think this is a very enjoyable pour. I think this is something that at cask strength, it could scare away some newer whiskey drinkers. I also think that some of the people that are into, like, the more unique stuff, they may have a bottle at their bar or whatever, but they don't drink it anymore because it's Maker's Mark.
Right.
It's not rare. It's not tough to find. It's kind of, whatever it might be. I think you go back to this. This is a nice, easy drinking 109 proof, surprisingly.
No, it's, yeah.
But I mean, it's something that I've enjoyed this first glass. I really do. And as far as the pairing, I'm going to give the pairing actually a 9, because I think that you combine the price point that you're on. We had an episode a while back called Balling on a Budget. I mean, this is exactly that. Like, $40 bottle, you got a $7 cigar, and you've got a great pairing. Like, this is not like your steak dinner at a high-end restaurant, type thing. But this is something that it's also not like you're mowing the lawn. You're like, all right, I'm going to smoke a Brickhouse Connecticut. You probably enjoy it, but it's a good cigar. This is a sit down, have a drink and a cigar. So I'll give it a 9. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. With that ends part 1, guys. We're going to do part 2, and we're going to dive into, if you guys are tuned in live, please stay tuned. I'm excited to talk to Pete here and kind of figure out and find out what you've been up to. Hell of a story. So, guys, thank you very much. I want to thank our sponsors here, Tinder Box at Easton, and also Altadis USA, BS Cigar Company. Thank you, Tinder Box, for the Brickhouse Connecticut. And also contact them if you want one of these hoodies. I'm not wearing one of the T-shirts tonight, but check out their social media. They've got the T-shirts on there. We have a 2020 shirt is what I call it. It says, when the world hands you some BS, light it up.
Light it up,
yeah. So that's the 2020 T-shirt. Now it's going to linger into the 2021, it seems like. But and then we also have a red and gray kind of if you're a Buckeye fan, it's a Buckeye shirt. If you're not, it's just a red shirt. And that's going to just be BS logo on there. It says focus on the silver lining. And then we got the Nicaragua sweatshirts available as well until the end of the month. So Altadis, we've got the H. Upman Nicaragua, which is a fantastic medium body cigar. We're going to be smoking that here in the second part as well. And then BS Silver and Gold are also available. And patreon.com. Thank you guys. Patreon.com/BourbonBS podcast. If you guys want to help out, it's either a monthly contribution, 5, 10, 25, whatever you want, or you can just donate or contribute one time and then cancel it. We appreciate all the support. You guys are amazing. Helps us give a reason to keep coming out here and not just smoking in the garage.
You also have the podcast shirt.
The podcast
That's
shirt,
what I'm wearing underneath,
which we do have some available still, and that goes to the Patreon customers. And then we're going to be doing a few more. I got a blue one on right now, and it says pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together, and has the logo on the back. So it's amazing what you come up with when you're drinking. Guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Stay tuned. We'll take a quick break on the live. Enjoy your week, guys. And now we just keep it rolling for a minute.
All right.
If you need to hit the head,
I'm good.
You're good?
No, I'm just ready for another splash of that. That's good stuff.
Do it. Do you mind cracking that just for a
Grab
second?
the bottle and I'll pour you.
So I see a lot of people on the live feed. You guys are joining in with what you guys are smoking. And Todd Boss says,
like
Cask strength in Connecticut, different combo.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, I think it's a great combo. It really surprised me that it stood up to it.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I think a lot of that has to do with it being a U.S. Connecticut instead of an Ecuadorian Connecticut. There's just a little bit more there.
Yeah.
And then also having the Connecticut broadleaf binder, because that broadleaf, whether it's shade grown or broadleaf Maduro, like it has a unique flavor to it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that gives the cigar just a little bit more kick to it. And then using Nicaraguan tobacco instead of Dominican. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like I already gave my rating.
It's one of those cigars that we've talked about before. Like you look at it on the shelf, and you're like, oh, that's just going to be like super, super mild.
Right.
Like, you might be a little bit surprised.
But I don't think it's going to scare off the mild smokers.
Like, I mean, it's that mild to medium, just pushing on that bottom edge and medium type of strength cigar. But
it's been interesting to see too, like the more that I've gotten into enjoying cigars and things, that I kind of gravitated from Dominican tobacco to Nicaraguan, and actually noticing that real difference, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
a lot of it has to do with the soil.
Really. Yeah. It's the soil in Nicaragua. It's I think it's got a little more oomph to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that volcanic soil
Yeah.
versus Dominican. A lot of people go to Dominican if they're looking for something kind of along the lines of some Cuban brands they know, just because the climates are fairly similar. As long as you're on the eastern part of the DR, typically you go a little bit more west where the mountains are, you'll get a little heavier tobacco out there. And then Nicaraguan, if you want cigars with a little bit more body, a lot of that, more spice to the tobacco because of that soil and everything.
Absolutely.
And then you got Honduran, which is its own animal as well.
Yeah. I feel like you got a nice healthy pour over there, Nate. Is there water in there?
I still had some left from my previous.
How much?
Some.
Yeah, huh?
What?
All right. Well, I'm playing from the senior tees over here.
Right.
Which is good for me. I'm good with that.
Now, see, I told you guys, and my wife wanted to make sure too. I mean, coming here, I had to have some kind of sustenance.
Yeah.
You had to eat before.
So,
Skyline.
I mean, well, at first, Skyline, a 4-way, you think that's a really good idea. And then it's one of the, I mean, you talk about like the burn sneaking up on you. That burn will sneak up. That you'll feel that little tummy burn later.
Little bubble guts.
Right now, I mean, it's kind of interesting because when you talk about being from Cincinnati originally, I mean, you talk about there's nothing more polarizing than Skyline chili.
Oh my God,
I love Skyline.
When it comes to that. Gold Star is the other.
Star.
Yeah.
That's it.
But see, growing up there, though, I mean, in my neighborhood, you had Price Hill Chili, you had all these other smaller, little like mom and pop shops and stuff
that could succeed in Cincinnati because that's the thing.
That's
they probably
the
could
thing.
Succeed in Columbus or Cleveland just because it's not as well known.
Right.
Before we start part 2? So I went to school at Miami.
Okay.
What was the deal? I don't know if they still do it, but they had like a hot dog deal, like it was like $1 hot dogs or something like that. I don't know. They had some days during the week that they would like have these like really cheap ones. There's
the conies.
Conies.
The cheese
Yeah.
conies.
Oh,
cheese conies, like $1 or whatever.
I recently introduced my oldest daughter to those.
Because
they like the 3-way, right? You get the spaghetti, the chili, the cheese.
On the coney,
But
the
then
amount of cheddar
it's
cheese is
on
the size of the hot dog.
It's
like, is it
equal
real
amounts.
cheese? Is it real?
Cheddar.
Yeah.
It's cheddar.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's
It is a lot of cheese.
I was very sick after that. The car ride home couldn't have been quicker, and it was like a 2-minute car ride, and we were all kind of like trying to position ourselves, like leaning.
Wait, how many conies did you?
It's like 6 or 8.
Yeah, that's why.
Oh,
mean,
well,
It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the
19
whiskey.
or 20 years old. All right, I didn't drink then. Yeah, I was just stupid.
yeah, you can't do conies like you do sliders.
Oh,
Right.
You can.
Well, you could.
You can. I can tell you. This is the last time I did that. All right, let's get started with part 2 here. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast. This is episode 152, part 2. We in the first part we did the Brick House, Connecticut, so check that out, as well as the Maker's Mark Cask Strength, which we are still sipping on, and everyone's still smoking it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so check that out for the reviews. More information about JC Newman, about Maker's Mark. We had a lot of info on there, and I'm still joined with Pete Scalia and Nate Hale. Got Dustin Bovey behind the scenes there tonight, and live studio audience. Not very live, but they're there.
They're live, not lively.
They're live.
Right? Yeah.
I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton, Altadis USA, and BS Cigar Company. Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, where the BS Cigar Company is exclusive to, by the way. And then also Altadis USA, Monte Cristo, Romeo Julieta, H. Upman, like we're going to smoke tonight, and countless others. So thank you guys for the support very much. We do have the BS hoodies. So if you guys are listening to the audio, it's a blue hoodie with white lettering. It's like Nicaragua colors, and that is available for pre-order up until now, until the end of the month. So check that out for sure on social media. Contact the store, Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. And also patreon.com/bourbon&bs podcast. Nate reminded me because I completely forgot about it until the end of the podcast. We do have shirts available as well. And he's going to flash everyone right now.
There we go.
Pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. And the podcast logo's on the back. Great tri-blend shirt as well. So just contact us if you guys are interested, or sign up for the patreon.com/bourbon&bs podcast. And we'll try to get you squared away. We're going to get some new colors as well. There's a Patty's Day color that I'm going to definitely make some. It's green. Oh, it's nice.
Yeah,
It's nice.
that's sharp.
All right. So tonight we've got Pete on, and I am really, really happy that you came on. I really am. We talked about it, I mean, what, months and months ago?
Mm-hmm.
Before COVID? I can't remember.
Was there
You
life
had a
before
tree?
COVID?
A lot more.
That's
Well, all right.
right.
It was easier life before COVID?
Kinda. Yeah.
Depends who you ask.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you contacted me. I can't remember. You were still with Channel 10 here in Columbus, I think.
Right. Well,
And
we
you had a tree fall on your house.
yeah, that was exciting.
You were living in a hotel.
Right.
Nice
Right.
hotel, or was it like
Now the Residence Inn.
there you go. Well, shout out to Residence Inn.
Right. I mean, no, those guys were amazing. And I mean, you go through a life-changing experience like that, and, a family of 5, my son, God love him, he spent like a quarter of his young life in a hotel, but it helped having the Buckeye Bourbon Bar down in it was kind of like, we called it like the basement of where we lived for 6 months. But, and I mean, obviously that's a whole story in itself, but I mean, I remember initially, we had made contact when I was at Good Day Columbus.
Yes.
And BS first became a thing.
That's right.
And I was going through recovery from one of my surgeries.
Yeah.
And received a very generous BS cigar pack
That's right.
to try them out. And the silver's still one of my favorites.
Was that when Cameron was out there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he was with Channel 6 at the time, or
Mhm.
6 and 28, right? Fox and ABC.
Yep.
And we had you guys out to Tinder Box at Easton for like the Christmas thing, and then I think you guys interviewed me for when the tobacco age went up, or maybe that was
Mhm.
Channel 10. I can't remember, but yeah, Cameron Fontana, and that was kind of fun because you had already tried it, I think, the first time, and then Cameron Fontana, who's still with Channel 6 and 28,
Mhm.
he was out doing the whole holiday shopping thing at the Easton and everything like that. And then we finish our thing, comes back to the studio, and Pete's like, gives us a shout out. He's like, by the way, that BS cigar, fantastic cigar. And I was like, all right, are you allowed to say that on TV? All right, you did, but all right. Everyone loves them, so that's cool.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been trying to line this up for a while.
Yeah, we have for sure.
But a lot has changed in
it
your
has,
life
for sure.
So
yeah.
So give everyone, if you could, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
background. You know what I mean? Like we already kind of alluded to, for those that don't know, that you were with the news
Mm-hmm.
for years.
Mm-hmm.
How many years?
Here in Columbus, we moved to Columbus 10 years ago.
Okay.
So
before that,
that was, what other world event can we base this off of? I had my first morning anchor job was in Dayton, Ohio, but we lived in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. So it was 3.5 years doing the 160-mile round trip.
Morning news?
Doing morning news.
What time did you leave your house?
But, oh gosh, let's see, back then, I mean, for a good 15 years, the alarm was usually going off around 1 a.m. So
what time do you go to bed?
It's like working third shift.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, now, since then, a lot has happened with I've had surgeries, kids, all that kind of stuff. But no, I mean, we moved to Columbus in 2011.
Okay.
And, by that point, I had been diagnosed years before with pretty severe rheumatoid arthritis.
Right.
Something I'd always dealt with. But after we moved to Columbus, we wanted to start a family. We were looking to starting a family.
Nice.
We were living in Short North at the time.
Okay.
And, I've been actively involved with the Arthritis Foundation for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of figured working in media, there's a lot of misconceptions about arthritis, that I wanted people to see that it's not a little old lady's disease, that, especially rheumatoid. I mean, it's something that can affect everyone. I mean, a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And,
but it is known for an older generation. That's kind of what it's known for, right?
I kind of joked around with Shannon a little bit before we started. Like, if you watch commercials about like arthritis medicine out there, it's always, some white-haired 60, 70, 80-year-old person in the commercials. You don't realize how old were you when you were diagnosed?
For me, it was a little later. I was 30 years old.
Okay.
And actually at the time, I was a touring musician. I was touring playing music.
That's right.
And because my wife hates that I use this line all the time, but I mean, you go back and forth between broadcasting and music, and you find that neither one's really a good fallback career for the other one along the way.
No,
but
all right.
But no, we were in Columbus, and I knew that the treatments that they have for autoimmune disease like RA, they do great things for you, but they're not so good if you want to start a family. So I had to get off of my medication for at least 6 to 9 months before we could try to conceive.
Is this fertility? Is this being able to?
The medications can adversely affect the fetus in the womb, even from the guy's side.
Oh, wow.
Some of the medications I was taking, some of the treatments. So, we went through that while I was, on air and everything. And, when we moved here in 2011, average weight, healthy guy, loving life, right? Waking up early in the morning. And, once we first started trying, we thought we were pregnant, and I'll never forget. It was the night before we were supposed to hear the baby's heartbeat for the first time on a sonogram, and my wife had a miscarriage. So it was back to square one. But for me, that meant that I needed to be off that medication longer. And so,
how long are you talking about?
So by this point, we're a year in. And instead of medications, I was just taking a steroid to kind of try to keep my symptoms under control. Well, working in TV, if you look at what I looked like between 2011 and 2013, I looked substantially different. The steroids I was on, I started gaining a lot of weight. And you can't hide that.
No,
when
it was in your face. That's actually, I think, when I started watching. The morning news. I think I got old enough that I watched the morning news.
Right.
It's funny. You tell people what are you doing this? What do you do before work? I click on the news. They're like, how old are you?
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I'm 30, whatever, 30. Like, all right. But I mean, I noticed that
and we prided ourselves on, making it like something fun, like a good way to start your day. And that's sort of where I came, because you're coming from like an entertainment background. Like that's what I felt like I brought to the table. But the longer that we kept trying and I was off my medication, we noticed that not only did my appearance change, but my mobility pretty much took a big hit. I don't know if you remember I'm really dating myself here, but if you watch reruns of the Carol Burnett show, Tim Conway did that character where he would barely, he'd do these tiny little steps. I literally would walk like that. And it got to the point where when I was at 6 and 28, we had an amazing crew behind the scenes. It got to the point where it was so bad that they would literally meet me at my car every morning with a wheelchair and bring me into the studio. And I would get up and I would do the show.
Yeah.
And, finally it got to the point where, I said, I just can't do this anymore. But the timing worked out that by then we had gone through the process of in vitro fertilization, found out my wife, Amy, was pregnant.
Nice.
And so basically, once we found that out and I could try getting back on my meds, I saw a rheumatologist here in town that I still see, Dr. Lee at the Columbus Arthritis Center. And she basically took x-rays of my hips. And we found that basically every joint in my body, the cartilage was pretty much gone.
And that is typical?
If the disease is not treated well, basically with rheumatoid, it's an autoimmune disease that your body attacks itself thinking there's something wrong when there's not. So it's attacking healthy tissue. So a lot of these autoimmune diseases, lupus, where it attacks the organs, that sort of thing. And there's all different varying degrees of this thing. So once we found out that Amy was pregnant through, IVF, we recognized right away that I needed to have immediate hip replacement surgery to even be mobile.
And how old were you?
So at this point, I was right about the time I turned 40. And
not the time you typically need hip replacements.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And so I took a few months off of work, which again, not an easy thing to do when you work in TV. But during that time off, it was kind of a crazy time. I'm recuperating. I had both hips replaced in December of 2013. And I'll never forget being on a hospital bed in our living room for 3 months while my wife was in the other room on bed rest for complications with her pregnancy. So my mom, a saint from Cincinnati, came up, stayed with us that whole time.
That's awesome.
So, but
not the bed stuff, the mom stuff.
Right. Oh, hey, moms always,
moms are always saints. Not always.
Absolutely.
But
in this case, for sure.
Yeah.
And
my mom, I know, is a saint. Yeah.
But we
That's
basically, it got to the point then, I was coming back to work and I grew one hell of a beard.
Nice.
It was literally,
was it as gray?
It actually, I don't know if you guys remember that visual of when they found Saddam Hussein in that foxhole.
I remember that.
I was, like that kind of thing. 3 months, not shaven. So I came back to work, but I knew that it was still just beginning though, because I walked with a cane.
Yeah.
By then, a lot of that steroid weight had started to fall off, but I knew I still needed to get my knees done. So I found a great surgeon who was able to do both knees at the same time 14 months after I had both hips done. And that's when things kind of got dark for us. It was one of those things where by then our first daughter, Lola, our miracle, was born.
Yeah.
And it bothered me that I was laying in bed in the other room and couldn't get up and go see her.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one of those, and the hips were relatively easy. Knees, like that's another story. It's a little harder rehab. But I knew that, once you get through that, and I remember my wife sat me down and she said, listen, this is the year of the Phoenix. This was 2015 in February. I had both knees done.
I love that.
She said, this is when you are going to, rise back up. And
yeah.
So, I went through that surgery, went through that recovery, and it got to the point where we started thinking, okay, well, maybe, hey, why don't we prepare to go through IVF again to expand our family even more? I was starting to feel a little better.
At this point, you had Lola.
Back. At this point, we had Lola.
Okay.
And then before we went in to start the process again, we found out that my wife was pregnant with our second daughter, Sophia. So we're like, wow, one in a million. Like we went through all the money and everything, the time and everything to start a family.
Yeah.
And then, so, we had Sophia, and, throughout all this time, staying actively involved with the Arthritis Foundation and stuff. And then, a little over a year after that, we found out that she was pregnant with our son, Nico. So
you were busy during this time.
Well,
still.
that's
I mean,
it was
it's
proof
not
that all the new joints
miracle.
worked really well. We'll just say
and
that.
some other things.
And actually, it's funny too because I mean, I still
Good for you.
but it's like you figure all the other ways my body's changed, right? Like I still need to have surgery to correct both of my feet. Like you see my hands have changed, and you can't hide that. My toes kind of do the same thing.
Well, you share that stuff through some
yeah,
of the
I saw the picture
never
you
give up
post
stuff,
the other
which
day.
We'll
Like
get to. We'll get to.
Yeah,
I could see the scars from your knee replacement. And
Yep.
I was sitting there looking at that picture. I'm like, those ankles don't look like they're at the right angle.
Right. Yeah. Both arches collapsed. Both feet go out. The toes overlap.
And this is your body attacking itself, like you mentioned. Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, I mean, after 3 kids, my wife told me, you know, I don't care what other procedures you need to get done. There's one you're getting done before you come anywhere near me. So
once again, that's a great problem to have. I love it.
So,
And
but
you love
yeah,
her, obviously.
Absolutely. I mean, she has like been my rock through all this stuff. So we basically, you know, I had stayed, and like you said, I shared all of this on social media, you know, my time there. And then the opportunity came up not long after that, a couple years later, to go over to 10 TV.
Right. Which you had to keep under wraps. I remember that.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, covert meetings. You couldn't, you know, but it's always, I've always felt that I've had a responsibility to share what I was going through. And by doing that on social media with that hashtag of never give up, you know, you meet so many people who have gone through something similar, if not much worse. Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's always something worse, right?
Right.
Even if you're going through it, like you mentioned earlier, the dark, like there's that darkness.
Yeah.
And maybe we dive into that a little bit later, but yeah, you're right. That's a good perspective sometimes to get you out of that, is that there's always something that someone's going through.
Oh yeah.
That may be worse.
And
I mean, wakes you up a little bit.
And I had been very fortunate. I had started sharing our story, not just at like local events, and met some incredible families in Central Ohio and still in Cincinnati as well. My dad is on the board with the Arthritis Foundation there. And I had the chance to share our story at the national level. And, you know, I started realizing, I mean, you know, never give up was this common theme. So then COVID hits.
Perfect.
And, you know, everybody is stuck at home. And, I mean, you know, we were even, I mean, I was still at 10 TVs time last year and, you know, anchoring from home.
That's right.
So everybody's still, a lot of people, you know, doing a lot of this stuff virtually and everything. And, you know, my wife and I were kind of talking, and you kind of reach this crossroads of, you know, I think a lot of people during the pandemic, we've had an opportunity to think about like what is really important to you, what really matters. And I looked at the fact that, you know, for all these years of getting up at, you know, 1:45 in the morning, the toll that was taken on my health, as far as not being able to see family. And I thought, well, what if there was some way I could take, you know, the broadcasting experience and these never give up stories, and not just share our story, but share other people's stories. And so we came up with the idea of that new venture I started called PS Never Give Up. My wife was like, you know, because I said, what if I did like a podcast?
Yeah.
And I could share people's stories, have a social media aspect, that sort of thing. But Pete Scalia Never Give Up podcast is too long. And my wife says, well, what if just PS Never Give Up?
Was that intentional, like the PS? Like
with the initial, because it's my initials.
Well, I know that, but like the PS, like at the end of a letter or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that like, yeah, I like that.
Well, yep. Because there's always going to be a little something more. Right. So, you know, it's kind of like been in the infant stages. No better time to start a new venture than during a global pandemic when.
Smart. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Everything's safe, you know, finances, everything's good. Yeah. Just
right.
Start anew. That's perfect.
So, but I mean, it's just, you know, by sharing our story, I mean, it's a humbling thing. We've met some pretty fantastic people, and, you know, just looking forward to growing it in the future and sharing other people's stories. And I feel that, you know, especially over the past year, man, I mean, we all need some uplifting content.
There's a lot of people feeling that never give up right now.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I think that it's cool to hear that when you're talking about the health and everything else, right? So your side of it was this health issue that just kept piling on top of you. It's like every time you thought that, like, all right, I see a little light at the end of the tunnel. Well, you chose the family. So you sacrifice your health, like a lot of dads do, a lot of families do, right? Parents, they'll take the hit for family that's already there, but you're doing it like, let's start a family. And I think that's very inspiring. I think it's very cool. I think when you started meeting these people with the never give up, you started like kind of noticing this reoccurring theme of these people are going through some stuff.
Oh yeah.
Just like I am.
Right.
And it's never give up. How many times do you say, like, and I know this is a tough question, but like when you talked about, and I'm not trying to harp on it, the darkness side of it is that, did you have moments and were they regular? Was it the family, your wife, or your support system where you did feel like giving up? Because I think that when you have that mentality, to have the mentality of never give up, that just shows me a lot of times that there were times that you were ready to give up.
I mean, I think, when you look at that phrase, never give up, right? Like everybody's had some kind of a never give up moment. And it could be health related. It could be something, it could be your job, right? And you persevere, you show that fortitude. And you push through no matter what. And absolutely, especially after, having both the knees done, I started thinking to myself, okay, I've got this little girl in the other room. What kind of a dad am I going to be? You know what I'm saying?
Find that inspiration.
And
find your why.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget. And I even have a picture of it too, that I've shared on social where, I had the walker next to the bed. And there was one day that I was determined. I was tired of somebody bringing my baby girl in to see me.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. I just got up on that walker and forced myself in to her room. And my wife got a picture of me like leaning over, looking at her. And I think that was that moment. And let's be realistic too. I mean, when it comes to that darkness, right? And in one way or another, a lot of people experience that. And I think that gives you a greater appreciation for the little things. It makes you realize, like, all of the minutia and all of the dumb shit that maybe irritated you in life. It really gives you perspective.
We get caught up in, like, when caught before COVID or before a disease, a diagnosis, before that breakup, before the job loss, whatever that life altering thing is. There are so many things you take for granted, or you just are just going through your day.
Yeah.
It's just another Tuesday.
Right.
You don't stop and look around. You don't go out and take a walk. You don't exercise. You eat a little bit worse. You don't really sleep as well. You just, like all those like things that just kind of roll into it.
Yeah.
And that sometimes will also contribute to taking things for granted more and more, because you're not really focusing on your health. You're not focusing on the people around you. You're not focusing on yourself.
Right. And
when that hits you, it's how you react.
Well, and what was nice is, so in 2019, life was good. Had the job, still working the crazy hours, doing all that kind of stuff. But no, as you had mentioned, then things are going along just great. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen those. Having kids, you make some interesting purchases on Amazon. And I do
that, and I don't have any kids.
I got the
I'll tell you that right now.
I don't know if you've ever seen those big it's a inflatable unicorn sprinkler that I had out in the front yard. And it was July 2nd, 2019. I would go to bed at 6:00, right? So I'm going to bed before the kids do.
Yeah.
My wife,
Sun's
again,
still up,
being a saint, working her full-time job, but then taking care of the kids, good night, going to bed for the night. And I had just gone to bed. It was about 6:30 or so. And my wife had our son, Nico, who was just a few months old at that point, took him into his bedroom. And the girls, after dinner, while she's doing her thing, putting him down, they'll, watch their shows on an iPad or whatever. They're still sitting at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And I heard the wind picking up and the rain was coming down. And we live in this house, back in the woods, surrounded by trees, beautiful
views.
Just, that was really great, especially working in news and stuff, to be able to come home and just turn it off. You know? So
that quiet place.
Absolutely. So it's like, I'm in there and I thought, wait a minute. I left that unicorn sprinkler out in the yard, this big inflatable. And if something happened to that, I would never hear the end of it. So I jumped up, I got out of bed, and I'm standing, and we have a ranch, big open floor plan all windows in the back. And I'm seeing like the rain's coming sideways, the trees are blowing. And I looked out the window and I could see this unicorn just kind of bobbling around. I'm like,
It looked
okay,
scared.
it was very scared.
Eyes were wider than normal, which is
Absolutely,
weird, I'm sure.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But once I realized unicorn was safe, I looked at the girls sitting there at the dinner table, and as I was saying the words, "Wow, girls, can you?" And you know, at the time they were what, like, I think our son was only maybe 4 months old.
Yeah.
You know, my daughters were 5 and 3, and as I was saying, can you believe how windy it is outside? It was the loudest crash I had ever heard, and the whole ceiling above our heads just exploded. And a tree limb came busting through, and I looked over. There's drywall hanging over.
Oh my gosh!
Over our girls. Rain coming in, limb laying there, blew it over a chair that Amy had just been sitting in a short time before. And so they're screaming like this, just the shock of like what had happened. So you know, a limb had come through, but you know, we weren't sure what had happened. And so she comes out, you know, with the baby. And as she, like, I grabbed the phone, called 911, called the fire department. She's calling a roofing buddy of ours who had just replaced our skylights the year before in our kitchen, right?
Immediately.
We're like, come over, you know, can you get a tarp? As we're on the phone, the second one hit.
Oh, God.
And basically what it was, we had a, I mean, you know, thanks to this, the emerald ash borer, we had like a couple years before, about like 15 ash trees taken out.
Yeah.
But we have a number of at least 100-year-old oak trees. And one was right next to the house. We even had an arborist who said, hey, if there's any tree you got next to your house, you want a big, strong oak like this.
Sure.
Well, it was only half of that tree that had dislodged another limb. That's the one that pierced the roof right above the girls. Then the other half fell and completely wiped out our sunroom, the living room, split our garage in half. And the fire department was like, listen, if you have your kids, you know, get them into your vehicle and get out of the house. And so my wife puts the kids in her car. I'm in my car. And as we're backing out of the garage, the ceiling collapses. And now keep in mind, too, with rheumatoid arthritis, any autoimmune disease, it reacts negatively to stress. I mean, anything would, you know.
Nothing reacts well to stress.
So that is
included.
That basically is what led to then we had to have our house entirely rebuilt. And at first we didn't realize how long it was going to take. And we were thinking, you know, if we did temporary housing, like an Airbnb type thing, we'd have to move after a couple weeks and do it again. And we thought, you know, with 3 little ones, you know, there's no way we could do that.
Yeah, getting in, settled, and then moving again. Yeah.
Right. So we ended up getting 2 adjoining hotel rooms at the Residence Inn downtown, and ended up staying there for 6 months. We were hoping it would have been done by Thanksgiving. And I'll never forget, you know, we got the call that, you know, the contractor was amazing. He wanted to make sure everything was done right.
Well, sure. Yeah.
You know, he half jokingly said, hey, if I'm going to be on the news for something, I want it to be good. So, you know, like rebuilding the house.
You, yeah.
But
treat you right.
right. So, but I mean, it was just one of those, you know, I mean, the cool thing was we got to explore like downtown for 6 months. Kids got to go to Coastside, like got to experience
breakfast.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's, you know, my wife didn't have to make breakfast for the kids in the morning.
Basically,
it was a cool thing, and the staff there was incredible. Like basically helping out with the kids, and
that's awesome.
And as I mentioned, I mean, having Buckeye Bourbon House was down on the first floor, so I mean, to me,
do they know your name?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I knew the answer.
If they didn't at the start, they knew by the end of that second week, probably.
Oh, absolutely. But to me, I mean, you know, if we would go downstairs for a nightcap, that's technically like hanging out in our basement, because I mean, you know, we had the baby monitors. We were, you know,
you were living large, actually.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
You
right.
I feel like you had your own, you know, staff. You know what I mean? Like chefs, bartenders. Yeah. That's not bad.
So, and then go figure. So
get there,
it was like what, a week before Christmas, 2019, we finally moved back in. I did a little like Facebook Live thing of the kids seeing the house for the first time.
I remember that.
And then go figure, 2 months after that, we weren't allowed to leave. So we had spent all that time waiting to get back home. And then
that is good timing, though. You got to look at that silver lining, because it's good if you were still in the hotel.
I couldn't imagine.
Right.
Well, and at least the hotels were open at the time.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Unlike, during the spring and summer when all the hotels in town were shut down.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Joseph. He says kidding. He said they engraved Pete's name.
Yeah,
on his
there you
table.
go.
Might have.
It
might be there.
That's my buddy Joe Yu checking in from. It's actually one of my best buddies in New York City. So
Nice,
he's
nice, Joe.
he's a big cigar guy there too. So.
Love it.
But I mean, honestly, that's what got us through. It was family and friends, and it was just another story just to give you perspective, right? I mean,
I feel like your last 10 plus years, there's a lot of perspective coming out of that.
we've cheers to perspective. There you go.
That's the word I think for 2021 is perspective.
But it's amazing. I mean, you have 3 kids, you, your wife, so it's 5 people in a house, and a tree takes out almost half your house. No one was hurt.
That's the blessing.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Especially if you're all home and you said that your wife was sitting in a chair. That
absolutely.
Yeah.
And now Lola again. I mean, she and Sophia was just old enough at 3. I'll never forget the first thunderstorm we experienced after we moved back in the house.
Nope.
And
it's like a dog going to the shower.
Right.
Like here's thunder, gone.
Oh yeah. But it was a big cathartic thing for us though was we had an even bigger tree in our front yard, and it's a plant, right? It seeks out sunlight, so it's leaning over the middle of the house. And my wife's like, we're not moving back in until that's gone.
All the trees are gone.
Done it once, not doing it again.
Man.
We're gonna mow the whole forest down.
Literally
leveling it.
That week in December of 2019, before we moved back in, these amazing tree guys came out, and these guys are like spider monkeys jumping up there, like in the limbs. They're like cutting down limbs, doing the whole thing.
Yeah. And
they cut that tree down like 2 days, but I'm getting chills thinking about it. They cut down the tree 2 days before we move in. But then after we're in the house, we get all our stuff that was salvageable. Most stuff we had to replace everything, all our furniture, all the kids' toys. They couldn't guarantee that there weren't little shards of glass, so they had to get rid of all of it. Now, obviously, insurance, we got to,
oh yeah,
it's cool and take care of things, and we were very blessed in that regard. But we had this tree that was taken out in the front yard, and I kid you not, the stump alone from this thing was 8 feet across.
That's a big tree. Was it another one of those 100-year-old oak trees?
And we found out when they cut it down, it was starting to rot in the middle. And they said within a year or 2, it would have been next.
Oh my God.
So when we get all our stuff back, the people at ServPro are amazing, right? The disaster people that come in. So we had all these empty boxes. It was like we were moving in again for the first time.
That's amazing.
So what was cathartic for me is I took every one of those damn boxes and I burned them on this big stump out in the front yard.
That sounds like something I'd do.
Right?
Just big old fire.
And so now I took it upon myself one day, I'm like out there looking at this big charred stump, and just got online and made a big trip to Home Depot and had a bunch of block delivered. So now I've got about a 32-foot diameter fire pit.
Ceremonial
yard, and it's every time I
pit.
grab a cigar and a little whiskey and I sit out and I look and I enjoy just watching one of the trees that tried to kill us burn.
It's a reminder.
So there you go. Absolutely, man.
Oh,
no doubt about it.
Yeah, that one hadn't done anything yet. You were just making sure it wasn't going.
Oh yeah. That was preventative measures.
Like, I got you this round.
All right, so Pete, what I want to ask though, So there's the backstory, everyone.
Yeah, there you go. I know it takes a while to get there. So
just a couple bumps in the road, and here we are.
Right.
That's
right.
But I do want to get into a little bit more of the PS Never Give Up.
Yeah.
So that obviously, you had a great job.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I watched.
Yeah.
And we had some viewers that were local
mm-hmm.
tonight live that were saying, they were saying how cute your kids are.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a personality for the Columbus area, probably wider than that. And you have this thing about you that people watching for the news in the morning, they gravitate to the channel you're on for the personality. It's not just this fake news person that you don't know, but you have this ability to kind of come across in a very personal level. You share your family, you share your story.
Mm-hmm.
And now you made the move and we joked about it, but it's like, what made you leave the networks? What made you go to this point where you're like, I need to spend my life doing this, the things you learned from the people that you met,
Sure.
the never give up mentality, that you're going to make a living.
Right.
Because when you go from a steady job, no matter what it is, even obviously it's great that you have a following in a sense, through social media, because of you were in the public eye, whether it be local and soon to be hopefully like national and more. But you go from that, even if someone leaves like a desk job or a cubicle job or whatever, and they would say, you know what I want to do? I want to inspire people. I want to get out there. I want to get in front of people. I want to talk to them about my experience, talk to them about their experiences like you're talking about. What was that big moment that you were saying to your wife, so honey, this is what I'm thinking.
Right.
The paychecks aren't going to be coming in
right
away.
Right.
And maybe not steady.
Right.
It's a big undertaking.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is for sure. And thankfully, I mean, I'm blessed to have a partner in Amy who has always been like a go-getter type, right? Like she started her own online women's publication in Cincinnati and then in Columbus 15 years ago.
Wow.
Built that up herself.
What's that called?
So she had Cincy Chic and C-Bus Chic, but she has like expanded, her online publishing and her thing that she's doing. But I think it was one of those things where you get to that point where, I mean, let's look at, aside from COVID, the news cycle itself over the past couple of years. I really feel for like somebody like me who comes from more of an entertainment background. And I appreciate what you were saying about, being relatable to people, because I always said that no matter what I did for a living, what you see on TV is the same thing you're going to get, like when we're sitting here hanging out, having drinks or whatever. And I think it was, just a realization. We had a conversation of, look, I've been able to, thanks to technology, still do what I was doing in this huge facility with all this equipment. And I was doing it from my home studio. And I was able to still have some reach, and I was able to still get involved. As I mentioned, the Arthritis Foundation not only has been a great way for me to stay connected to that community, but it's also been a great way for me to share our story and find other inspirational stories on a bigger scale.
Right.
And I also looked at it realistically that, when it came to my health and things which have to come first, getting up at 1:45 a.m. and not seeing my kids and being like ships passing in the night was a part of it. I know that I'm going to have more surgeries in the future. And I'm being realistic from a standpoint of, am I going to take another TV job here or somewhere else and say, well, by the way, I need to take like another few months off.
Right.
And we started thinking, I'm like, well, once I get PS Never Give Up going, this is something that when I have surgeries in the future, I could do this while I'm recovering at home with the kids, keep it real, and that's one thing I wanted to do, is just keep it real and find a way that we can kind of get this off the ground. Now, of course, in the grand scheme of things, I'm thinking this will be great. We can get together. I'm going to interview people. It's going to be awesome. But everything is shut down. And it's been a challenge to say the least. But, I actually, with the Arthritis Foundation, I just hosted their national event. The past couple of years, I had the honor of they do an evening of honors where they recognize volunteers, partners, and all that from around the country. And I got to MC that in Baltimore a couple of years ago, Atlanta in 2019. This year, obviously, was postponed, canceled. But I did that virtually from home. Now, granted, everything's kind of been put on hold with that because I happen to have a drink next to my laptop that was running everything. And,
you got to watch that.
Yeah. So right before we went live, actually, for that event, I spilled a drink right on my laptop that's doing all the stuff and everything. So that's getting repaired right now. So that was, like another minor setback. But it's one of those things where, when you start,
all smooth sailing,
of course,
as everything.
But life. Would you appreciate it if it wasn't?
maybe,
know,
maybe you would.
Easy times breed weak men.
Hey, there you go.
Sure.
I like that.
I like that.
I like that a lot. But it's one of those. I mean, anything. If you start anything from the ground up, it's going to take time, right?
Yeah.
And I look at this as something that one of the first stories that I just finished editing through people I've met on social media. One of the first stories I'm going to share is a little boy who lives in this tiny town in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. Who's had to deal with like all kinds of like health issues and things. And again, you think about, a country with over 300 million people in it. We were able to find this little guy who has an inspiring story of his own to share, and his mom and the stuff that he's doing. When people stepped up to help him, he wants to give back. And I thought, this is the kind of stuff that I think people really are craving right now. Like something inspirational, something meaningful.
Yeah.
And, now, of course, like, when it comes to, monetizing it and doing all that kind of stuff, it's going to take time to build that. But I mean, we've had faith in getting us through everything we've been through so far.
Yeah.
And I think that from this point on, it's just going to be icing on the cake.
So when you talk about like building income, because I think it is it is tough to do when you dedicate your life to inspiring people and stuff like that. Like obviously you do stuff like this and it's free, like you're doing Facebook, some brief videos, and they are inspiring. I mean, I watch them, and I know a lot of people do. But I know you have, and I think it was your sister that actually threw it up there. Is that the psnevergiveup.com?
Yeah.
So now you got, at least in the beginning stages, you have some cool merchandise.
Yes.
And this is all going to obviously you and the family, and then obviously what your involvement is with the Arthritis Foundation, right? I mean,
well, and so a big aspect of that. So we wanted to start the online shop that so when people are either listening to the podcast or enjoying the social media content, that they feel like they're part of something, right?
Yep.
So what's actually been kind of a blessing with all the craziness and being stuck at home, I mean, I've learned more about web design and setting up like e-commerce and all that kind of stuff. So we have the framework in place with the psnevergiveup.com website. We have the blog there. The podcast is in the works and being edited and getting ready to launch that. We have a Kickstarter campaign that's going to be kicking off in the next month.
You share all that on
sponsorships.
the
Absolutely.
Bourbon and BS community page.
Okay.
Which you're a part of.
Yep.
That's on Facebook. Anyone listening, this is a separate thing from the podcast, but you can also, I'll share it on the podcast as well.
Yeah,
when you get all that set up, I mean, this is part of it. I mean, it's not huge. We got about 1,400 members, but this is how it all starts. Sharing it to some of the hobbies that you're into, like the whiskey, the cigars, and we already have people on the live feed asking for more information.
Yeah, and the one big important aspect that Amy and I knew we wanted to do with this was when we were going through all this stuff, right, with dealing with the chronic illness and dealing with infertility issues, we are also going to be starting the PS Never Give Up Foundation. So 5% of the profits from our shop are going to go towards resources through fertility specialists. The Arthritis Foundation will be a partner, and other groups to make sure that other couples that are going through something similar to what we went through, that they have information and resources, and we want to establish grants to help them, because it's expensive to go through all the treatments for the disease and for trying to start a family.
I hope you're on your wife's insurance.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're doing the crossover period. But again, I mean, it's all about, if I could find a way to create meaningful, inspiring content that gives back. It's amazing to me that I feel like for the first time in a lot of the stuff that I've done, from touring, playing music and doing commercials and being on TV and doing all this stuff, I feel like it now has a real purpose.
Yeah, it's the foundation. It's built up to this point.
Yeah,
giving you a skill set to get to a level that you can actually be in front of people, where a lot of people don't have that. What's one of the biggest fears is public speaking. You don't have a problem with that,
and that's going to be a big aspect of what we're going to look into doing too. Is by all means, I mean, with corporate sponsorships and people that want to get us involved and obviously speaking at these different events and things, and just continue to grow it. So You know?
Well, we do have a listener. He's in Illinois, Ryan Jones. And I actually met Ryan listening to another cigar podcast one night, sitting in my garage during COVID. And so I was out here too often, just like most people, right? You know, you were joking about like, you know, drinking, smoking, all.
Right.
I was out here, I was listening to another podcast. He and I started talking back and forth and everything like that. Crowned Heads, based on he had met Miguel from Crowned Heads at an event in Cincinnati because he comes to Ohio for treatments for his daughter.
Okay. And I had just met, I see that he has their systemic juvenile rheumatoid idiopathic arthritis, they call it now. They used to just call it JA.
And he had mentioned that earlier, JA.
Yeah. And dealing with uveitis, you know, that's the strange thing about this disease and all these different types of rheumatoid arthritis, especially like with kids. I met so many like resilient kids that know more medical terminology than they should have to know at that age.
100%.
But, you know, Ryan, I mean, you know, we literally were just talking about, we gave an award through the Arthritis Foundation. They give a big, the Howley Prize, this award to an individual every year who across the country. And this guy had like really stepped up, very similar situation. His daughter was his connection to it. And there are like great resources out there. The big thing is creating a community, right? And I saw the community that the Arthritis Foundation has for adults, for kids with JA Camp. And I wanted to, in my own, you know, smaller way, reach out to people, because one of the most important things for me, like it's cool to get out there and do like the national events and meet everybody and share my story. But in a way it's selfish because it reminds me that I'm not alone in what I'm going through. And then even people, you know, like my wife, there are people out there who are working, they're moms, but then they also have to be a caregiver.
Yeah.
And I hear from a lot of those people too. So, you know, Ryan, I mean, thanks for, you know, commenting, and please, by all means, like, you know, I'm very open. One thing I pride myself in, you know, social media interaction and stuff is, again, keeping it real. And I mean,
you are good at that,
developing relationships with people. So,
well, he is also a part of that Bourbon and BS community page. And that's why I started that community page on Facebook, because Facebook is a very good tool to get people together. Obviously, lately it's been a little bit more pointed on a lot of people's posts.
Right.
There's Facebook, just like I feel like there's like COVID fatigue. There's also Facebook fatigue right now, because people are just tired of dealing with the same things, just beating them up. And then on Facebook, they want to talk about the same things that are beating them up.
Right.
The community page, Ryan's on that. And again, being from Illinois, the reason he listens to this podcast is that random Facebook connection.
Yeah.
Then he's on the Bourbon and BS community page. And so you guys are through Facebook linked up at some level.
Yeah.
So Ryan, reach out to Pete.
Yeah, please do.
I know your story is inspirational as well, what you've been dealing with your daughter, and how he has to come all the way to Ohio, to Cincinnati, I think.
But when you talk about these communities, though, Steve, and I mean, you know, you guys, the shirts like nail it, right? Like, I mean, this is an opportunity over a good cigar and a drink. You know, we'll figure it out together, right? I mean,
that's the goal.
Yeah,
that's the goal. Where do you see this going? The PS Never Give Up. I know you got the podcast going, you got the foundation and everything like that, but when are we to expect this podcast? When are we to expect the Kickstarter?
So we're looking at the beginning of February, and it keeps so it keeps kind of getting pushed back with different things that like pop up and stuff.
Life happens.
Absolutely.
Trees happen.
Trees happen, you know.
We can joke about that now, right?
Absolutely.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Really, I feel like I overstepped.
Yeah, it's
all right.
No,
Too soon.
Right. I mean, I really, you know, when I looked at starting this, I was like, it's not going to be just a podcast. It's not going to be just social media. Not going to be just a store or website.
Yeah.
I called it a movement. I wanted it to be the PS Never Give Up movement, that people who are a part of this really feel like they're part of a family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I
a
feel
community,
I mean, you know, even if it doesn't turn into like some like big Ryan Seacrest level thing, like it's
that's pretty big.
That's pretty big.
All right.
But I mean, to be able to get out
Thomas
there and, you know, there'll be opportunities really grow this with the public speaking.
Yes.
As the podcast gets developed, the Kickstarter, and that's a whole interesting process too, that you have to learn how that goes through and getting approved for it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we just got the green light to approve it. So now it's just a question of getting our ducks in a row, launching it. So that will be coming soon. And we do have, like, obviously all the merchandise. And actually, this is, if you don't mind my saying this is one thing that my wife Amy worked with a local designer.
Podcast. we don't have this foundation. You can say whatever you want on this.
This is a kind of a cool thing. These bracelets that we actually sell, it's a capsule bracelet.
Okay.
So what you could do is it comes with a little piece of paper where you can write something like an affirmation or something that means something to you, and take that with you wherever you go. So I actually have a little piece of paper in there that all 3 of my kids put their names on. That we can just kind of like, and that's like a reminder.
So this is for those that are listening on the audio. Basically, you've got a very, very fashionable, obviously, with the beads and everything. That's a thing,
right?
You know what I mean? And then you have this like little metal cylinder on there.
Yeah, and that's actually a little capsule that unscrews, and you can put like an affirmation or a meaningful thing.
I love it.
And then obviously, we've got like the t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. But and again, we're finding out that it's a process, and it costs money to establish a foundation and do all that. It's a time-consuming thing to become a legitimate, sort of foundation that gives back.
Are you a charity found, like 501?
Yeah, we're working on establishing the 501c3. Okay. So again, that's one of those things where it takes time to go through the IRS process and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So the response just since we announced it, like last fall, and then going through the winter and getting the website built and everything, has just been incredible. So now it's to the point where, okay, we have stuff that we can get out there.
Yeah.
Look into securing like some corporate sponsorships, and we want to partner with people that it makes sense, like health organizations, that sort of thing. And it's, anytime you could do your own thing, I know my wife knows firsthand, it's a lot of work.
Yep.
But it could be rewarding in a lot of ways. And one thing that's really cool for me is my kids are of the age where they are able to like look, when I was worrying after my surgeries, like what kind of dad could I be? Now I'm looking at it like they're going to develop an appreciation that if they look at somebody and they look different, or they have something going on, to treat them with kindness, because you don't know what somebody's dealing with. And if my kids can like look at, their dad's personal experience, and if it'll help them, be better people, then to me, that'll make the whole thing all worthwhile.
You're molding that next generation.
Right.
Well, I think it speaks volumes to you, though, like the stories you've told about how you wanted to get up and get into that room and be a part of your children's life. That goes just so many miles into the future, because it's molding your kids. You're able to, and that's what I love about this story, is that because I saw recently your kids on Facebook, and I forget which child it was, but had a PS Never Give Up t-shirt.
Her shirt. Yeah.
Her shirt. Yeah.
And that was that was Sophia's choice. So she, so Sophia is our 4-year-old, our middle child, and who, oh my gosh, we're going to be in for a ride, because she's definitely picking up her father's like the creative streak and things. And, I don't know how many
those fallback careers.
It's absolutely. Yeah. Daddy, tell me about the time you spent on the road playing music. Well, it's, we'll wait till you're a little older.
Yeah. Not all.
But
my wife actually texted me about that, because she saw that you apparently opened up for Ted Nugent.
Yeah, I did.
My wife felt the need to actually text me that during this.
That was a few haircuts ago. But no, a guitar player buddy of mine, TD Clark, out of Chicago. We toured with Bad Company and Ted Nugent. And that was kind of like rock and roll boot camp. I got to live out my own real life rock and roll fantasy.
I love
it. Like the song. So, but yeah, gone back and forth. And that's actually going to be another part of the Kickstarter, is I've had this recording studio at home.
That's beautiful.
Working these. Thank you. It's, kind of accumulating all this gear over the years from this previous life. And Amy, I think, always knew, my wife, that I wanted to tap back into that.
Yeah.
So part of that Kickstarter is actually, I am going to be putting out like a 5-song EP. And now that I'm saying it, I'm going to have to do it.
It's recorded.
But And again, that'll be one of those things where a portion of those proceeds are going to go towards establishing the foundation and helping people, and while also maybe being a little self-indulgent and getting the chance to play music.
I was gonna say, what do you play?
I believe I play keyboards.
Yeah.
And sing. And actually, my dad and I have had a cover band off and on together for like 20 something years called Snidely Whiplash. If anybody remembers the old Dudley Do-Right cartoon, Rocky and Bullwinkle, Snidely was the guy. And to be honest with you, I mean, when all the other stuff started happening with my body, when I really freaked is when I looked down at my hands and I saw them changing.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, I was never classically trained. So I didn't have to really unlearn anything.
You still play, right?
My hands just kind of go where they need to go. And, I have a couple I've dabbled. I've kind of gotten over, like, it's a weird thing. Like, I'm comfortable being in front of a crowd of people, but if it's just me, it gets kind of weird. So I've been
see
inspired.
yourself in a camera.
Right.
Zoom in here real quick.
Right. But I mean, I've been inspired by, like,
right,
I mean, I have a lot of friends who, they're musicians for a living who haven't been able to work for the past year.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing these guys and I'm inspired by what they've done. So I've done a couple like Facebook Lives and played some songs and that kind of thing. And, that's just another aspect of it all and put it out there.
Well, I think hearing your story, it's really interesting to see how when people don't understand like the pieces of the puzzle that are coming together, when you see all the pieces on the table, you know what I mean? And like, I'm not a puzzle person, and I know like people in my family and people I know, they're puzzle people. Like, hey, you want to put together this 1,000-piece puzzle? They're like, I was like, all right, yeah, let's look at it. And I'm like, all right, where are the corner pieces? You know what I mean? I'm like, I got those. Where are the hard edges? I got the edge pieces, and then it's like everything else. I'm like looking at this box cover.
Yep.
And I'm like looking at the table, looking at the picture.
Right.
I'm out. But when it comes together like that, you realize that every little thing that you've gone through, everything you've shared tonight, and like the Ted Nugent story, like that wasn't even on the table.
Right.
But I think that I use that metaphor because that is something that you need, that Ted Nugent piece out there on the table. And for a person like me and a lot of people out there, they look at that like, what's this Ted Nugent story doing on the table? Like, how does that fit into this lighthouse that I'm trying to put together?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it does fit together. But you have to take that effort, what you're doing. I love this story because it's like you take all the pieces of the 40 some years, right? And now you have other big puzzle pieces. Yeah. Your wife. Yeah. Your sisters and what. You talk about your family. Your kids are now new pieces. They're like, well, that wasn't even the original set. Like, I don't know. Like, now I got new pieces out here. Like, how is that going to fit in? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you get it all together and you look at it. And I feel like that might be where you're at. There's still some pieces out, like kind of on the outlying areas of the table. You're like, we should be good here. It's like the missing screws when you put something back together.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what are these missing?
You get that IKEA stuff and you're like, there's that one dowel. That's
I'm pretty sure this is it, right? They probably gave us some extra pieces.
Right.
But it all fits together. And I love this story because that is what I'm hearing, is that the puzzle is starting to really take form. And I think that's an important message, I think, for a lot of people out there when they listen to this. And if they when you get that podcast, you get the speaking engagements out there, it's that I've already seen people like, well, how do we contribute? How do we get in there? Because I think everyone, like to your point, everyone wants to hear some inspiration, whether they know it or not.
Right.
And podcasts are huge right now. We don't solve a lot of problems out on ours. We drink and smoke and then we talk about life, but sometimes it rambles. But this is one of those episodes that I feel like that puzzle is really, like, if you could hold it up in front of the camera right now, it's like, there's a couple pieces that haven't been put in there yet. Yeah. But it's starting to take shape.
I think it's almost like a puzzle where you start from the inside instead of finding the edges and building the frame. Like you have a puzzle where you're starting from the inside and you're building outwards, but you're not limiting yourself inside a box. Right. Like you can keep building that puzzle as big as you want, as many pieces as you want to add into it, and grow that puzzle. You're not limiting yourself to a box.
Well, I think there's appreciation of the experiences you've gone to, because this is one of those puzzles that you look at and it's not like ages 10 and up.
Oh, right.
This is ages
Yeah,
like
this is a
40
little
and
more-
50 and up. Like
this
you
is
got
one
to
of
go
those-
through the shit to get to this.
When you finish this puzzle, this is the one where you buy that lacquer that you put on top to make it like a,
Oh yeah,
you
permanent.
seal it and
Yeah.
Frame it.
yeah, right. Right.
But I think that it's something like, to use that metaphor even further. I mean, I think there's going to be
I
more
like that.
pieces that are introduced. You know, I mean, you're going, like, to Nate's point, is that puzzle can get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's what I love about this story, is that like your life has just introduced all these hurdles, as people call them. They are like roadblocks to most people. So anyone listening that have never heard Pete's story, that never listened to him or on the news, like I had an opportunity to do, and you know, like I kind of like a lot of people, I feel like, especially in the Columbus area, like you feel like we kind of like walked through some of this journey with you, because you are open. And that's what kept people, and I hope the stations were very grateful, and they sound like they treated you right when you needed to take the months off, is because that's what people were tuning in for.
Right.
It's not like you can go to anything now. You get it on your phone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Get news alerts. Boom, boom, click, click, click. All right, I know what's happening right now. There's apps, you know, like, oh, there's a fire truck in this part of the area and all that stuff. But to tune in the morning to listen to someone that you want in your living room, you have a TV in your bedroom, you want to have that person as you're waking up in the morning talking to you about what's going on. That's what translates.
Right.
And I love that. I absolutely love that. It's something that I don't think that is a skill. I think this is something that you've worked on, but it comes naturally. I'm excited to see where it goes.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate Ian that just commented and said I ought to turn that tree that hit the house into a puzzle. Actually, and Ian, that's actually a good point, because I was saying that when I can do in-person type things like this, there's a lot of people whose stories I want to share that are still like locked down right now.
Yeah.
I always said, though, I wanted to do it over a table that was made out of the tree that tried to kill me.
I love it.
So that, you know, so I'm working on that part.
Ian said something else about if you have an image of the tree, you could use it as a logo and call it the tree of hope or life.
Oh,
Let the branches represent the connections that came back to the body.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, that's good.
I know
stuff.
somebody mentioned too, like the personal website. If you want to know all the ridiculous details of like how this stuff started with me when I was a little kid and all that kind of stuff, that's out there too. But the psnevergiveup.com, like I said, I mean, it's been a labor of love over the past few months, figuring out like how it works and everything. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it with you guys.
Absolutely. I think with that, I mean, for part 2, we always do the closing remarks also. So this is something like a summary or something like message you want to leave the viewers. So I'll actually start with Nate, if that's cool.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
I think one of the cool things that I learned about this, going in and knowing what little about your story that I did, I was expecting you to say like one of the reasons that you left the news was because of your illness. And like, that's, you know, that prevented you from being able to do what you want to do. But instead, what I heard was, you know, even though you had the illness, like that didn't end what you were doing. That actually drove you to start a new venture. And so being able to do it with, you know, the Arthritis Association, your podcast, being able to spend more time at home with your family, like all those things drove you to actually make this change. There's a lot of people that, you know, they wait for something bad to happen to them, and then that's when they make a change. You know, something happens to where it cuts off a dream, a passion, a job, relationship, and they just start over. You're starting a new adventure, but it's not because one necessarily ended that you didn't want to end. You chose to take that step and like, here's what I have, here's what I want to do, here's how I do that. And you know, change some of the priorities in your life. Instead of being on TV in front of however many people watch the morning news and not spend time with your kids, you change those priorities. Like, you know what? I want to spend time with my kids. I want to spend time with my family while I can, but I also have a means to actually inspire, to motivate, and to help other people. So you kind of took the initiative to actually do something with the cards that you were dealt. Instead of just like, oh, lost that hand. I guess game's over for me. Like, no, like this is what I got. I'm going to play it the best way I can. So I think that's one of the coolest things I learned about this tonight.
I love that.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
How about you, Pete? Closing remarks.
I think it's just, again, I don't know if we'll solve all the world's problems over, cigars and drinks and that kind of thing.
Some.
But like you said, it's a
it's a good start.
I mean, it's a community, and I like the fact that just keeping it real and having the opportunity to like interact even with the folks that have been, weighing in on the live stream, and it's a humbling thing to me that I didn't take lightly. Developing like an online presence and that sort of thing. I'm grateful for the support and for all of those pieces that I got. I love the puzzle analogy, and as I continue to build that out, I'd like to make sure that there's a little more bourbon and BS as part of that in the future.
Good. Always BS.
Plenty of that.
Always bourbon. The puzzle analogy is something that I got from listening to you. It's funny when you listen to people talk and you talk about their life, their story. And we had a podcast not too long ago about active listening. And it's about, really not waiting for your turn to talk. It's not waiting for like to give advice or anything like that. It's actively listening. It's every day. And I think that's part of what Nate was saying is you never know when you're going to, and I say when because it happens more and more, when you're going to be diagnosed with something that you weren't expecting health-wise. When you get dealt the cards, as we talked about, with the job, with a relationship. And Nate, you hit it on the head, I think, with the fact that it's like a lot of people wait until they're knocked down to really get back up stronger. So the thing I learned from this podcast a lot of the times, and tonight is no exception, is that you hear Pete's story, and as you said, you hear other people's stories, Pete, and it's like they got it tougher than I do. I thought I had it tough.
Right.
And that this perspective goes back to the perspective. So I think that the best encouragement or the best thing I took from this is that, as always, it's you got to live your life as you have shown, at least in this, what I know and what I've heard tonight, is that you continued to. There are plenty of people that you got diagnosed with this disease, and your wife's like, well, what about the family? Like, what about the kids? And you're like, I don't have time for that right now. I'm trying to survive. My favorite parts about that story was the fact that you were starting to do the whole fertility thing,
right?
And you're like, and she's pregnant, and I'm like, listen, I'm like, wait a second. So like, you're on your step. You're on your bed. You're dealing with all these health issues, and then like, she's pregnant. All right, good for you. Right, good for you. Still living life. All right, cool. You freaking lovebirds. I love it. So it's living that day still, no matter what's going on. It's you make sure you take care of your health the best you can. Right. You take care of the people around you the best you can. And the real core of it is you take care of yourself so that you can do all these things. It doesn't matter what happens. You lose that job. You make a career change. You position yourself. That's the goal. Every day you wake up, that PS never give up thing. When you wake up and you're kind of like, I'm kind of tired. I really don't feel like going to work today. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to like, eat healthy today. You can cheat every once in a while on some of those things like diet and exercise and all that stuff. Right. But the big picture is like, remember what is the worth of it and what is the purpose of doing it? Because if you get dealt a bad hand in a game of poker, doesn't mean that the game's over. Right. You know what I mean? That puzzle that you're trying to put together, you're looking at it, you're like, I can't figure it out. You don't just walk away from the table. You pour another bourbon, you're like, maybe it'll make more sense if I have a little bit of whiskey. And all of a sudden you get that creative vibe. You're like, oh no, this
absolutely.
And you get that kind of like that in that Rain Man type thing. It's like, well, you wake up in the morning, you're like, I did all that. I'm not saying you have to do it to that level. Right. Just a little bit of that creativity that you may not have, But I think that's what I learned from this is that attitude that you have now, the PS never give up. it's something that don't wait. Like Nate was saying, you know, you don't have to wait till you're knocked down to start this mentality. This is something that you can live every day. Things are going well. Never give up. Keep striving to really build yourself up so that therefore you can now bring your family along. You can bring the people along. You can do all these things that you're doing, these great things that you're doing, Pete. But it doesn't have to be this success story based on failure or obstacles. You can have this. You can be great. I posted this today. You can be great and also be working on yourself constantly. That's what champions do. That's what some of the most elite people do, is that you are doing well and you're still working on yourself. So that when you do get knocked down, you get back up quicker because you're ready to keep going. So I love this whole conversation. I love the whole episode. I love it. Pete, I wish you the best. I hope we can get you back on sometime in the future and see where you're at. You know what I mean? This is not the biggest podcast. You're going to get a lot more subscribers and viewers than we do. Maybe give us a plug sometime down the rown if you get have a whiskey episode or a cigar episode, garage episode.
I think Steve's Steve's trying to get on the podcast.
No.
When you do yours.
No, they don't want to hear my story.
Well, you know what, though? There is one aspect of that is going to be happening.
Yeah.
And there's something I used to do years ago. And my buddy Joe that was weighing in here from New York, we started a thing years ago called Tuxedo Steak Night.
Love it.
We get about 14, 16 guys together, wear tuxedos for no reason, and go eat steak, drink bourbon, and smoke cigars.
Yeah.
That's my kind of night.
So I do that without the tuxedo.
But we're planning on putting together something when we are able to do so as a group. And, you know, I would love for you guys to be a part of it.
Oh, that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. Well, I'll leave it at this, is that, you know, we've got the community page. You're going to, like I said, you're going to really go bigger and better and broader, but use this audience. We have some people, anything that you're doing. And I encourage anyone listening to this podcast is look up the psnevergiveup.com, where they're at now, and keep following that, because I think this is something that's inspirational. I think that you'll enjoy. I think this is something that you will be able to get behind. And people like Ryan out there, you know, Ryan Jones, he's got this story going on right now that no one may never hear. Now we have a connection. Now this could be an episode. This could be something that you never knew this was happening. Illinois to Ohio, just to get treatments for this. People don't realize the impact that something like that can make. So I want to thank our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, also Altadis USA. And I do want to thank, make sure you pour some in there so you can cheers. Yeah. BS Cigar Company, and also patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. Guys, check out also psnevergiveup.com. They've got some swag going on. They got the capsule bracelets, which are very, very cool. And I just really appreciate it. This is amazing. And thank you to all of you guys out there for listening. Please share it, like it. It'll be on the audio as well on iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff. But the Facebook Live video, it's funny. This is where the interaction happens. It's on YouTube Live as well. But this Facebook, while we still have it in the capacity we have it, who knows when that'll change, use it. This is the good part of it. This is getting together. So thank you guys very much. Cheers. Pete, thank you.
Salud.
Cheers. Slanja.
Enjoy your week. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much.